Hi everyone, and welcome. Today is all about the dogs. I'm going to do a recipe that is a grain-free cinnamon apple with peanut dog cookie. These cookies are a favorite of both my dogs, Tehya and Grendel, and I thought that you might enjoy doing something nice for your pets as well. Thank you for being here, Tehya and Grendel. I know you're going to do a great job being the sous chef. Are you shy? Making dog biscuits can seem like a daunting task, but in actuality it's rather simple, and you only need a few pieces of equipment to do it. I like to use a food processor because I like to use whole peanuts. If for whatever reason you don't have a food processor, feel free to use a blender. If you don't have a blender for whatever reason or a food processor, feel free to use just a regular grater to grate your apple and peanut butter instead of peanuts. Other items that I will find useful in this process would be some parchment paper so you can roll your dough in between them, a rolling pin, a bowl or two to mix everything together, a whisk, and a spatula, as well as a baking sheet or two so that you can actually put them in the oven. So let's begin. The very first ingredient that you'll use is actually an apple. We're using this in order to obtain a little bit of sweetness without adding sugar to the cookie itself. You can use a Granny Smith apple, a Honeycrisp apple, a Red Delicious. Whatever you enjoy eating is an apple that you can use for the dogs. In this case, I'm using a Granny Smith apple. There's no need to peel this. So I begin by cutting my apples in half and then into quarters. Afterwards, I want to remove the seeds and this little nubbin right here. All of the large pieces of my apple are then placed in the food processor. Once my apple pieces are added to the food processor, I'm going to add some peanuts. These are about 75 grams of peanuts, or approximately half a cup. These peanuts are roasted, but they are not salted. Be sure that when you do get peanuts, you get unsalted peanuts. If you don't have any unsalted peanuts, you can get peanut butter, but make sure that there's no additives to it, meaning you want a natural peanut butter that doesn't have any salt added to it, nor any starches or sugars. In order for my peanuts and my apples to process easier, I'm going to add a little bit of oil to it right now. The oil that I'm using is a grapeseed oil, and it's a neutral flavor oil. And I'm also going to add some apple cider vinegar to it. The apple cider vinegar, it's about 1 ounce, about 2 tablespoons worth. The apple cider vinegar is an unfiltered raw vinegar that still has the mother to it. You want the mother because that has all those probiotics that are actually very good for your dog's gut. And so I incorporate apple cider vinegar into these cookies. Away we go. You want to process this until it's a little bit on the soupy side. I like to have it very liquidy. This is the consistency that I'm looking for. If when you're done and you're finished blending everything and it looks like there's a lot of liquid in there, don't worry, you can just add a little bit more flour to your overall batter and everything will come out just fine. For the dry ingredients, I'm going to use 260 grams, that's 2 cups and 1 tablespoon approximately, of chickpea flour. The reason why I'm using chickpea flour is because there are several subscribers who actually have grain-free households. And so I wanted to make sure that they had an option to do a grain-free dog cookie and not go and just buy a few ingredients when they're only going to use it for the dog. To my chickpea flour, I'm going to add cinnamon. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. I'm using cinnamon because it has such wonderful effects for a dog. For example, cinnamon is an antioxidant, which makes it great for their neurological processes and for brain function. Cinnamon is also an anti-inflammatory. So if you have a dog that might be a little bit older, or you have a dog that's very active and has a tendency to pull a muscle here and there, it would be a great addition to their diet. I'm going to add a little bit of ginger. Oh, I think I did a half a teaspoon worth. Now, ginger is also an anti-inflammatory, and it has a tendency to be an anti-nausea for dogs. So this will help with the digestive tract in addition to the apple cider vinegar that we've added. Finally to this, I'm adding a half a teaspoon of baking powder. I'm using baking powder to help give that cookie just a little bit of a lift and a nice structure to it. If you want your cookies to be a little bit crunchier, you can feel free to omit the baking powder altogether. Last but not least, my dogs, Tehya and Grendel, are both seniors, and as such, they need to have a little bit more calcium in their diet. So I actually make what's called eggshell powder. The other purpose of the eggshell powder is when I put it in dog cookies, because these cookies are so good that a human could eat them, even with the eggshell powder, but I really want the dogs to have them, people will know because there's little flecks of eggshell in there, so they realize, oh, that's the cookie for the dog, not for the humans. To make eggshell powder, oh wait, just one moment. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of eggshell powder. To make this, all you have to do is just take the eggshells, the leftover eggshells, rinse them off, lay them out on a sheet pan, and put them in an oven at about 300 degrees. Cook them off for maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Once they come out of the oven, they're all dry at that point, and just put them in a grinder. Put them in, you can use a coffee grinder, you can use a spice grinder, you can use a food processor, or even a blender. Just get them so that they're nice and small. So I'm going to whisk everything together just to incorporate. Once I've done that, I'm going to make myself a little bit of a hole in the center, so a well in the center. And in that well, I'm going to pour all of our liquid ingredients that we got from our food processor. Once added, I'm going to mix it up. You can use your spatula or your whisk. I prefer my spatula because then I don't get stuff stuck in between the wires of the whisk. Once the dough looks a little on the shaggy side, it's about what it looks like right now, I'll then go in with my hands and I'll actually knead it. See all this dough in my hand? A great way to get it off is to get a little bit of the flour, coat your hand in it, so the flour is now coating every bit of that dough. Now rub your hands together. See how it rolls right on off your fingers and cleans up your hands. Now I'm going to incorporate some of this flour. This dough seems to be really sticky. I'm going to go ahead and add another tablespoon worth of flour. If that happens, just add a tablespoon at a time worth of your chickpea flour just to get it to a consistency that it's an easy to work with dough. This is approximately where I want this dough to be. You can see there's still a little bit that's stuck to the bottom of the bowl, but that's okay. And in general, it sticks a little bit, but not too bad to my hands. That's perfect. Now for the fun part, rolling out the cookies and then cutting them out. Today's shape, I'm going to use a round cookie cutter. It's about 1.5 diameters in width. And from this I can get 80 to 90 cookies depending on how well I roll it out, how thin I roll it out. Feel free to have fun with whatever shape you want. If you have bigger dogs, make bigger size cookies. If you have smaller dogs, make smaller cookies. Just have fun with it. So I'm going to portion out about half my dough and place it on one parchment paper. Flatten it out a little bit, then add the second parchment right on top of that. This will make sure that your work surface stays pretty clean. That way you don't have too much of a mess. Because this cookie dough doesn't have any flour to it, you can roll and re-roll these cookies as many times as you want. Before you cut out your cookies, it's always wise to make sure that you can take both sides of the paper off. Otherwise, your cookies might stick so much to this and you'll never be able to get anything off. Liberally coat your cookie cutter in a little bit of this chickpea flour as you punch out the cookies. If your cookies look a little deformed for whatever reason while you're putting them on your cookie tray, that's okay. Just pat them down a little bit and, just adjust their shape as they land on the cookie tray. If you're concerned about how much your dough is sticking, feel free to dust your parchment paper before placing your dough on top. You can also dust the dough after you've added it to parchment paper. See how that made that a little bit easier for me to roll out my own dough? The first way, when it was sticking to the parchment paper, was getting a little annoying. For these cookies, you can pack them in pretty tight on your cookie sheet because they have a tendency to rise, but they really don't spread very much at all. So feel free to load up your tray with as many cookies as you can. Once these cookies are cut, there's no reason to not go straight into the oven. I preheated my oven at 325 degrees. They take about 15 minutes to cook. If you want to have a slightly crunchier cookie, you can go anywhere from 15 to 18 minutes. If you want to have a slightly softer cookie, 14 minutes. Well, the cookies are out of the oven. I baked these for about 16 minutes. If you'll look closely, you can see that the edges of them are actually golden, and maybe there's a little bit of color in between. If you flip one over, you'll see lots of color on the base. These cookies will be a little bit soft when they cool off, but not overly soft. Look what Mommy has. Do you like it? Good, sit. Are you shy? Very good. Are you excited? Okay. The results speak for themselves, approved by both Tehya and Grendel. Please keep in mind that these are dog treats not dog meals. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you had, please consider pressing like and or subscribing. Thank you. Bye. Cockapin monster! Rah!